but you think of Jesus when he fed the 5,000, he thanked God and then he broke the bread before he deployed it. There's a level of breaking that happens before God can deploy you into anything. And I think sometimes we look at the breaking like it's a bad thing. No, it's a God thing. And so right now I broke off of being on vocational ministry, but it doesn't mean that I'm not thankful for those years. And those years built me. They built my work ethic. They built my grit. And, and I'm very thankful for those years in vocational ministry. I don't know if in 20 years I'm going to go back on staff at a church. I don't know. What I'm not doing is putting God in a box. I'm saying, God, do what you're going to do and I'll follow.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Word Made Digital podcast. Thanks for checking out the video version of the podcast here on YouTube. Of course, we've got the audio version as well if you want to check that out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. But we really hope that these conversations week after week inspire you, connect with you, maybe stir something up in you or teach you something that you haven't heard before. We've got a whole archive of podcasts right here on the YouTube channel, as well as a ton of tutorials to equip you really practically as a communicator, as a leader in the church, and as a creative. So I encourage you to check that out. Subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks so much to the sponsors, Compassion Canada and the Church Go, for making this season of the podcast possible. Cha-dee, welcome to Word Made Digital.
Thanks, homie. I'm stoked to be here. I've been stalking you for so long. So wondering
it's
you're
mutual.
Finally let me come hang. Oh,
yeah,
man.
I think it's mutual. We kind of are tracking with each other from afar. So I really wanted to introduce my people listening here to you because they need to know you and they may or may not know who you are. So let's start there. Give us a little introduction. Who are you? And let's dive in.
About a month and a half ago, I would have called myself an executive producer because I spent the last year producing TV shows. A year ago, I would have called myself a global creative director of a church, which I did for like 10 years. But now, man, I'm just a person who loves Jesus, who's got a podcast called I Cry in Corners. I'm writing a new book. I'm trying to love Jesus and do creative things. I'm not trying to love Jesus. I do love Jesus. But I'm just doing creative things and trying to build the kingdom and build the church outside the four walls of the church. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's start there. We were kind of just talking about it right before I hit record. I want to talk to you about podcasting. I want to talk about your book. I want to talk about what you're working on in New York, creative stuff. I want to talk about Cuba because it's something you really care about. So yeah. I we'll see what we have time for. But again, just to dive a little bit more into this context, you've just come off of, and in some ways, maybe my own story is not, we have different stories, but I spent nearly a decade working on a church staff and had been part of the church community for years. Like the senior leader had been my youth pastor when I was 13, grew up into it. And then in my early 30s was time to do something new for lots of different reasons. And so there's lots of people listening who we're talking like in the news, right? Like the great transition, like the great resignation everyone's talking about. Like there's a ton of people right now, if they aren't already, leaving their jobs. Like people are reevaluating what they're doing work-wise. So let's talk a bit about it. Why a big change for you at this moment in life? What sort of what led to you leaving the church? And you did so many interesting, exciting projects there.
I think why now? In my 20s, dude. In my 20s, I thought like, I'm called to vocational ministry. Like this is what I have to do. This is my calling. And then, my 30s, I came to realize that I was just on assignment. Because my job would change every year. Like I was the women's director and I did that for 2 years and I loved it. Yeah. And then during COVID, I was like the global creative director and I'm like so cool. I'm like the creative lady, right? It's like dream of my life. I'm 37 years old. And then COVID hits and I become my pastor's executive assistant / creative / I'm making movies and document. I don't even know, man. It was just like all of a sudden it was like it changed again. And it was like, God, I had to come to Jesus a little bit and say, what am I really doing? And I looked at all the incredible, amazing things that God had allowed me to do, working for the church, the big C. And I realized that building the big C has always been my assignment. And my call. Like, I just love to build a church. I love to build people. And then I would say in July of 2021, I felt for the first time a release to not be on church staff. And that was really scary for me. I was about 3 weeks away from turning 40, and I was overwhelmed. We had all these documentaries we were doing, and I don't know, I was just really overwhelmed, and I kept missing my exit to get off of work. Like, I did it 4 days in a row. And
your exit, you mean like in your car?
Yeah, like legit. Yeah. I was so overwhelmed driving that I kept missing my exit. And it was like the 5th day. I was 3 weeks away from turning 40, and I felt God. I felt it in my spirit, in my bones. And he was like, "You're about to miss your exit." And I was like, "No, man, I turned on the exit." He was like, "No, that's not what I mean." And it scared me. Like, my husband and I worked together. So I like immediately went to his office when I got to work, and I was like, "I think the Lord just told me we're going to exit off of staff." And he was like, "You're crazy. We've been here 20 years. Like, this is where we go to church. We're pastors on staff. Like, we're living our dream. Like, I'm at the height of my career. Why would I leave staff, you know?" And over the next 6 weeks, it was like things started to happen where I felt like the Lord was saying, "I don't know how many red flags and whales I need to send your way." It was like I was running in the opposite direction like Jonah. And I was like, "No, God, I'm doing what you said. You told me to build the church." And I felt like the Lord was like, "You can still build the church, but now you got to put your money where your mouth is. You've been telling people that ministry isn't on staff. So would you trust me to do that?" And so I had no plan B. I went to New York on a freelance project with my husband, and we're sitting in Little Italy, and we're having dinner with friends. And my husband looks at me and he's like, "I think we're supposed to come off staff." And I was like, "What do you mean we're supposed to?" Like, it was like...
So this was after you'd said it to him? Yeah, like, he was still processing it? Yeah.
He was still processing, and he was like, "No, are you crazy? Like, I love my job. I love what we're doing." And he was like, so he's walking the streets of New York, and God just put this thing on his heart, not for the city, but for the vastness of people. You know, the thing about the church is we live in this tiny bubble of our church and our events, and Sunday being the Super Bowl. But you know this better than anyone because of the work that you do. There's so many people out there that need to hear about the love of Jesus. And sometimes, dude, we get so internal working on a church staff that we forget about the people. And we found ourselves walking the streets of New York with God going, "There's a lot more people. And if you say yes to this, I'll open up doors." And so we literally came home, wrote a resignation letter, and sent it. And
wow.
And it was crazy. Everyone was like, "Are you guys nuts? What are you doing?" We're like, "I don't know, man. We don't have a plan B. We don't have jobs." This was in August. This was, 6 weeks ago.
This was really recently.
Yeah, this is real fresh.
When we're recording, yeah.
And we came off staff within 2 weeks. We gave it 2 weeks and everything. Everything was awesome. We love our pastors. We're still on very good terms with them. Nothing. It was no like bad stuff. I'm a firm believer that how you walk out of one season dictates how you walk into the next. And so we made sure that we were on good terms. We sat with our lead pastor. We sat with our senior pastor. We sat with our bosses, and we were clear with kind of what God was saying. And within 3 weeks, we had more work than we've ever had in our life. It was like the floodgates opened with opportunities, and I haven't stopped traveling since I left. And
wow.
I took a job in New York, working as a creative director at a digital marketing firm. So I work remote from there, from my home here in Jacksonville, Florida. And then I'm in New York once a month, training the teams and building brands. And then I'm working freelance. I was in Wyoming shooting a commercial a couple weeks ago and working with different ministries and building the church that way. My husband's doing a lot of the same. And
yeah,
honestly,
what does
he's
your
taking
husband
a sabbatical.
do? Is he creative world as well?
Oh my gosh, yeah, he's a beast. He's like super production guy. He built our tours and built our teams, and no one knows more audio-visual lights than that guy. And he's gotten some great opportunities, and he's just like, "No, I'm going to wait on God." I love watching him process this. He's like, just because I can do it doesn't mean I'm called to it. And he's just working through that. And he's just like, I heard God clearly say we needed to go. And when God says where we need to go next, especially, I felt very clear that I needed to take the job in New York. And it's been an incredible process thus far. But he's just working through and processing what that looks like. So we as a family, man, God's hand has been on us in more ways than I can even imagine over the last 6 weeks. But man, it's funny because you leave the church vocationally and everyone thinks you're mad at God. And so I got a lot of really weird DMs.
What are people saying?
What are you deconstructing was the big one. Huh. Are you deconstructing? The truth is this. I'm not deconstructing Jesus. I love Jesus. Jesus died on the cross. He's still faithful. I say this all the time, that God is still God and God is still good. Now, is his bride kind of sketchy sometimes? Yep. You know what I mean? Like, we're not perfect people. Yeah, you know what I mean? We're an imperfect.
Well, in any local church, the one you worked at, or the thousands of others. They all got issues. Yeah.
Dude, every church has problems. Every church has an issue. No church is perfect. Did I leave because we were imperfect? No, I left because God said go. And I think that's the big difference. And a lot of people, it's funny how many people want to talk smack when you leave too. Like, that just text out of nowhere. And, and I'll say this, and I said it to you earlier, but it's like, I honored my pastors and loved my pastors for 20 years. And I'm going to do it for 20 more years. It's who I am as a person, as a pastor, as a daughter of God. And I'm just not going to, you know what I mean? Like, I've never been that person, and so if I could speak,
want to say that louder for the people at the back. You honored them the whole time you were there, so
and I'm going to honor them before.
Yeah.
And so, if you're thinking of transitioning, if you're thinking of stepping off your church staff, do it because you're walking towards something, not because you're running away from something.
Yeah.
God blesses when you're walking towards something. You keep running away, you're going to run into some whales, and I'll tell you that is not a fun situation or process.
Well, I think some of the stuff you're saying is just so important. I think the reality is, like, for some people, they need to leave because it is a bad situation.
Yeah, 100%.
For some, it's really amazing when we get, like, the God calling, like a Holy Spirit sense, whatever. And sometimes it's just like we're using our brain and common sense. Like this is the end of the road here. There's nothing more for me here. And not because I'm not committed, but because this is either like an unhealthy place for me or my family, or just like quite literally, I've done what I felt like I came to do. And now I'm just, there's just nothing else for me to continue
It's an assignment change.
Yeah.
Joe, it's an assignment change. And I think that people are so scared of that assignment change. But at the end of the day, like when Jesus, you know this, man, you know more Bible than me. You're so much more articulate than me. But you think of Jesus when he fed the 5,000, he thanked God and then he broke the bread before he deployed it. There's a level of breaking that happens before God can deploy you into anything. And I think sometimes we look at the breaking like it's a bad thing. No, it's a God thing. And so right now I broke off of being on vocational ministry, but it doesn't mean that I'm not thankful for those years. And those years built me. They built my work ethic. They built my grit. And, and I'm very thankful for those years in vocational ministry. I don't know if in 20 years I'm going to go back on staff at a church. I don't know. What I'm not doing is putting God in a box. I'm saying, God, do what you're going to do and I'll follow.
Yeah, well, and even what you're saying about I'm picturing you walking the streets of New York, just like looking around at real people who God loves, and you're talking about Jonah, so I'm going to bring that story resonates with me so much because there's this line, and it's something like when God calls Jonah to go to these unlikely people, these not religious people, to go serve them and help them and communicate to them. He says, there's like 100, it's something like there's 120,000 people here, plus animals. Yeah. Don't you think I care about them? Yeah. And they don't know their right. It's like they don't know their right hand from their left. And don't you think I care about them too? Just this idea that like you're looking around and counting the faces and the 100%. Stories of all these people on the streets of New York is what I'm hearing you say. And you're saying hey, what about these people? There's something that's stirring in me for these people.
It is. I'm in airports, all different airports, and I'm just watching people. I'm in different cities that I've never been in, and I'm just watching people. I'm working with clients all around the United States. I mean, clients that aren't Christians, and hearing the things they have to say that have very different lifestyles than me. Let me tell you, there's a different way to talk to people that you can't use all your churchy language. You know what I'm saying? You want to really lead somebody to the Lord? Try not using churchy language,
Yeah. Yes, I'm having to do. It's actually kind of a fun exercise.
It's real difficult, especially when you've been in church for 20 years and you're trying to teach creatives to non-Christian people and talk about the creativity, and you can't say, be led of the Holy Spirit, or that I leave my Bible on my desk, and that's what inspires me. You've got to learn how to say those things in a way that is for all people and all men. And so, yeah, man, I'm navigating that. It's hard, but man, to me, that's the most Jesus thing I've ever done. I used to think it was, all the conferences I led and helped do creatively, or all the things that I put my hand to, and all the people that I hired, but it had nothing to, honestly, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. This is the most ministry I've ever done.
Well, I often think about, a lot of people talk about what the church can learn from the business world, or like, how does a creative agency run? In our case, we're talking creative. So how does a creative agency run that the church can learn from, mimic, copy? And it's certainly in terms of like leadership practices. And we look at like, what did the military do? And what did, the smartest MBAs, do to develop their startup, or what does Google do? Let's copy them. But I'm actually curious to hear the opposite. What do you think? I mean, I know this is super fresh for you, so it's like your first impressions on like the opposite. Like, what is it that as a church creative we offer to a regular creative agency, or like when you come from like, I've had like all this religious work experience and now I'm going into a non-religious work environment. What are some things you think can be brought the other way? Because often we're so quick to copy them, but they need to copy us on some things.
Yeah, I mean, I owned my own company in my 20s before I came on staff at the church. And so I had always been in a creative job. And then I came on staff at the church and was like, wait a second, you guys move at a pace that other people don't move at. Like, it's kind of crazy. You can't brand something in 4 days, Like the church, we just do things in the craziest, most amazing God duct tape type of situations that an agency is like, we were just, we can do this in 6 weeks. And I'm laughing like, bro, I can do that in 4 days. There's a grind that the church has that the world doesn't have, or doesn't need to have. They don't need to have it because they have this thing called time and budgets. And the church has learned how to be, has done things in a grimy way. And I say that in the most like loving, awesome thing. There's a grime and a grit to the church that makes me love her more. And I think that me bringing that into the agency has been, honestly, I'm like really proud of the work that I've put out recently. But it's a different type of work, man. I'm doing a lot of branding, like branding personas and things of that sort, which I love. I love identities. But when you walk into a room and they ask you the question in front of all your coworkers, like, hey, like if you had to brand yourself in 3 ways, what would you do? And they're like, Cha-dee, branding, you do it. And it gives me an opportunity to give everyone in the room a prophetic word. And they have no idea that that's what I'm doing. This is how I see you, and this is why I see you that way. And they're like emotional, and they don't know why they're emotional. And you're like, God, thank you, God, that you opened up this door for me to speak life into a situation that I would normally not get to speak life into. And I think the church training, the learning how to love people and see people and speak life over people. When you lead in a creative field in the church, man, you better live speaking life, because everyone in that room has so many feelings, And so for me, it's like the opportunity to speak life into places that life is not normally spoken into.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so true. You're talking about Jonah, you're talking about the Daniel story, the person going from a person of faith going into the Babylon.
It's exile, man. It's exile.
Going into exile, going into this other kind of environment and trying to actually through like the excellence of your work, show people something about who God is and what that transformation has been in your life.
It's the Jeremiah story. It's it's the Jeremiah story. He didn't say, hey, we're leaving. He said, this is where you're going to be. If you want this city to be at peace, build here. I'm just trying to build where I'm at.
Yeah. So, I mean, what would you say? Like, there's people listening. You've always got some great wisdom to give to people. It's what you do on your podcast all the time. What would you say to other people? They're thinking of leaving their job, whether, maybe there's lots of different reasons you leave, right? Some people are upset. Some people it's just the right time. What would you say to other people? Since this is so fresh for you, I feel like your wisdom is for like this moment for people.
I have a podcast episode called Quitting is Not a Thing.
Hey.
And I had to listen to it over and over again before I quit. Because I wanted to know, I wanted to be able to say I wasn't quitting, but instead I was walking into something new. And what I felt God said to me was, I said, I'm big on strength. Like, God, look how strong I am. I'll hold on to this. I'll hold on to this for you. And one time I felt like the Lord said, your strength isn't determined by how hard you hold on to things, but by how gently you let them go. And so I feel like if you're walking into a season of transition, right? It's not so much a quitting thing, but a letting go. Are you able to let go? And when you let go, is it a healthy thing? Like, are you letting go of bitterness? Are you letting go of unhealth? What are you letting go? To me, quitting has such a negative connotation of like, F this, I'm out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, there's no quitting in the kingdom. In the kingdom, we love people and we forgive people. But there is a lot of letting go in the kingdom. I mean, look at Barnabas and Paul. There was a letting go there. There are relationships that should end and that do end. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I have great friendships that were great for 8 years and then they were gone. And now we just kind of see each other on Instagram every once in a while and that's it. And that's okay. Some relationships are only meant for seasons. So I would say if you're in transition, I would ask yourself, are you quitting pissed off? Or are you letting go because God's telling you to let go? And, it's just the end. It's the end of a season and it's okay. I think that maturity knows the difference.
Yeah. And when speaking of that maturity, like as we've said from the beginning, there's no perfect church. And so there are some things we probably need to process when we're leaving. Like we need to work out, where would you say you should do that? Like go like okay, if you
not
shouldn't do that on if you shouldn't do that on Instagram,
and not on Facebook. Like don't process out loud with people that can't. Oh my God, my pastor Tim Timberlake says this. Don't tell people stuff that can't do anything about it. Like if you're telling somebody who can't do anything about it, you're telling the wrong person.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, don't go tell your coworkers that you're pissed off at your boss. You're just, causing dissent. Like, that's not. Go to a safe place. Go seek counsel. Like, go see a counselor. Go talk to a pastor. Go talk to your spouse. Go talk to people that are trusted. People who have a different perspective that are not in the trench with you. If you're talking to people who are in the trench covered in mud with you, they're going to be pissed off too. So I think wisdom knows who to talk to. But if you're talking smack to people and you're frustrated with people and the people you're talking to can't actually do anything, then you're just gossiping.
No, I like that as like a barometer, like a measuring stick for that. And I think I think people do it sometimes to connect or because it feels good to gossip or it feels like you have power if you have secret knowledge that other people
We call
have.
it processing. That's the new thing.
Yeah.
That's the new thing.
But I think
I'm just processing. I'm processing aloud. No, you're not.
Yeah,
you're gossiping.
but I think some of it is around like authenticity though, like because we don't want to feel like we're lying, And so there is a way to be honest
wisdom and maturity
without telling all
honest.
the details. Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, like, I'm going to say this. I'm just going to be honest. I mean, I'm being honest and authentic. Was it hard to leave? Yeah. I'd been there since I was 22 years old. Is it hard still? Yeah. There are some things I can't even pull myself to do because it's too emotional for me to do. Because letting go is hard. Imagine holding on to something for 20 years and then letting go. You might have let it go, but your hands are still stuck in that. So it's like
it's grief. There's a grief to it.
Yeah, man, and it's okay. But like grief, you never bounce back from grief in a day. It takes a while. So yeah, man, it's not being authentic. I used to be one of those people that would just say, because I'm fast on my feet, and I would say it and be like, oh, I'm just being honest. And then, you know what? And then I realized in my 30s, I'm not being honest. I'm being rude. I'm being disrespectful.
Right, you're just like cutting people.
Yeah, and if you don't have self-control over your words, that's actually has nothing to do with authenticity. That has to do with maturity. So like your maturity should trump your authenticity. You should know when to say. It's like discernment and discretion. Okay, discernment's knowing what God is doing in the room. Discretion's knowing what you should be doing in the room. And just because I have more to say about my leaving doesn't mean I should tell your entire podcast network. because I don't know them.
Right.
It might not help them. They don't need to know all the content.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But that's maturity. Maturity says, I love people. It was hard. But you know what? The cross was hard. And Jesus did it, and it was awesome, and there was salvation on the other end. And so, you know what? I was obedient to what God said. My husband was obedient to what God said, and we're super blessed because of it. Is it hard? Yes. Am I working through it? Yeah. But you know what? Life is hard, and that's okay.
Okay, so we're talking about authenticity, and we're talking about like where are the places you should process at, and what are the places you can be honest without having everybody know all your,
business.
There's a big topic that you are talking pretty publicly about right now, and that's where I want to talk to you about this Cuba stuff, because I think in like a world on fire. So context, really, really briefly, is you care I want you to say why, but you care very much about what's going on in Cuba right now, and you're advocating for it, talking about it online. And I want to talk about that for like, how do we talk then about things we care about, or a justice issue or something that ain't right? How do we do that? This world on fire, we all have something we care about, but a lot of us don't say anything because we don't know how to say it. So let's talk about that. What's going on in Cuba? Why do you care about it? And then let's break down what you're doing about that.
Yeah, well, first things first, I think that when you speak on things of social justice, you only can speak on what your experience has been. So like when the Black Lives Matter stuff was going off, I went to all my best friends, all my Black friends, and sat down with them, and I was like, tell me what I should know. Tell me what I need to say and how to say it. How can I come around you? I was just sending texts every day. I love you. How are you? Are you safe? Where are you? Like all I knew what to do during that season. And since then, since it became like such a, you know what I mean? Like I always understood it because I've always had such ethnically diverse friends, but when it came and it blew up during COVID, it was like all I could do was just come around and hug. What can I do? What can I say? And they'd be like, say this, don't say this. Say this, don't say this. And so what I'll say about the Cuba thing before I tell you why is that like, just don't talk if you don't have any actual Cuban friends. Just don't talk. Don't start Googling like, and I'm going to be really offensively aggressive with this because my family literally left communist Cuba so I could be born into freedom. Like there's no one gonna say anything to me about Cuba and it's the embargo and da-da-da-da. No one, because your family didn't leave Cuba unless you're an actual Cuban, and then I'll have a conversation with you. But it's like nothing has been more heartbreaking to me than when the Black Lives Matter thing and everything was going off, but nobody wants to talk about all the Black people that are dying in Cuba and all the artists and creatives that are literally being imprisoned in Cuba. And like the Cuba thing is not a new thing, Joe. Like it's a 60 plus year beating that has been like my grandfather's home was literally stripped from him. They moved a communist leader into their home. My father literally they came to this country. My grandfather worked 3 jobs. He was very affluent in Cuba, and like he died at 33 working 3 jobs as a janitor. Like just so that we could all come to the United States. My grandmother hid visas under her bed so that we could be born into freedom. Like they lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with all the cousins and everybody sleeping on a plastic couch so that like Cuba's not a new thing. Cuba's just now becoming a thing that everyone's hearing about because there's internet. So it's just like the George Floyd. That's not a new thing, guys. We just have internet.
We have phones now to like film what's going on.
Yes. It sucks. My husband's very brown. You know what I mean? Like we walk through airports, he's pulled aside everywhere we go. I had a friend during the whole Black Lives Matter thing say to me, why is your husband dressing so white? Why is he dressing so white? And I said, I went and bought him new clothes because he's very brown, you know? And she was like, oh, I didn't know that was an issue for you guys. Like, It was so frustrating to me for people to be so, just like they don't get it. And so for the Cuba thing, man, like, go hang out with a Cuban. Go sit down with a Cuban and understand what's really going on in Cuba. People are literally starving. That government is literally starving its people. Someone said to me, oh, Cuba's open now. Are you going to go on a cruise? No, I'm actually not. My family was exiled. I'm actually not going back. I'm not going to go and give money to the communists. Like, oh, it's just frustrating. I could talk about this in an angry, aggressive. So what I would say is this. Cuba's, man, they've been at it for 60 something years. And like on November 20th, the Cuban people literally started putting in requests to protest peacefully, which you can't do in Cuba, by the way. Like even like if I was in Cuba right now, go ahead and there's going to be people coming through my door in the next hour to come get me. Like what I'm saying right now could get me in trouble. It's amazing to me the things we say in the United States and in Canada and all these other places, and like you don't realize freely, what you totally get to yes, and you don't even get to realize. Like in Cuba, there's none of that. You say anything derogatory about the state, you're in jail. And November 20th, they started signing petitions and saying, hey, we're going to protest peacefully. And then the Cuban government said, cool. You know what we're going to do? Get all the army ready to go to, monitor the peace. Like they're ready to beat the living tar out of everyone on the 20th. So they like secretly changed it to another day. And they're telling all like on social media, like social media has been the voice of the Cuban people over the last couple months. It's the only place that they're able to get it out there and say, hey, this is what's really happening. So if you want to help the Cuban people, post something, amplify Cuban voices. Gloria Estefan has a beautiful, she's doing a thing with her family, the Red Table, like the Red Table Talk that like Willow and Jade and all of them do. But go watch theirs. On the, like, she's one of the most famous Cubans ever. Just go hear what she has to say about Cuba. And so, oh man, my heart breaks. Like I'm trying not to cry even as I talk to you about it. Cause it's like, there's just people, man, they're literally starving themselves. Like they're starving the Cuban people. Like that in itself. They're like, if you care about people of color at all, like you should care about what's happening in Cuba. If you have posted anything about Black Lives Matter, feel free to go ahead and post about Cuba. Because I had a friend who posted something afterwards and he kind of Kanye Wested the whole situation. Like, yeah. I see what's happening in Cuba, but black people are still hurting here in the United States. And it wasn't like a either or. It's a both and. There's like so many things happening in the world. The world is on freaking fire, like you say. Yeah.
And so that's what it is, right? It feels overwhelming because it's like, okay, you're educating me and us around this topic, or if we're not being educated, we're being reminded of it. And it's not that we didn't know black people there was racial issues in the US and police were biased. It's not that we didn't know that, but the media is bringing it to our attention again. And it feels like it's the compassion fatigue, or it's like the justice exhaustion. Like there's so many issues going on, and it sometimes feels like hard to know what to
post
about,
and when to post, if you should post. Yeah. So like even, for me, it's like if I see something that tugs at my heart, I'll repost it. I don't need to say anything. I'll amplify the voice that said it. Because I love them. Because I want to amplify the truth. And the truth is coming from somebody who's experienced it. So, yeah, man, not everyone's going to be a social justice hero, but everybody's called to love people. And I don't know. I think of Jesus, and there was that moment where he stood in a corner and he got that whip together. Like that took he sat there and he did that, and he did it for a reason. And I just feel like I'm not normally a big social justice person. I'm a love people. Like I'm not going to do something on my social media that I'm not doing in real life. So like whatever you see me doing on social media, it's because I'm actually doing it in real life. So Black Lives Matter to me. Some of my best friends in the entire world, like, are black. People of color matter to me. I am a white Hispanic woman, which means I am marginalized, dude. Like, I walk into a Spanish room and I'm not very Spanish. I know what it's like to not fit in, And so I want to make sure that people's voices are amplified. I know what that's like to not feel amplified. And I know what it's like to feel privileged. And so I have this really weird in between. And it's like, dude, God's called us to be a voice for the voiceless. And right now the Cuban people do not have a voice. And that's my prayer. My prayer is that one day I'll see a free Cuba. And I believe it. I believe it in my bones that I will. But, till then, dude, I'll just pray and I'll continue to post and continue to be an advocate. And I have some things coming down the pipeline that I'm doing and partnering with some organizations creatively to do some creative stuff and some artistic stuff, because a lot of the people that are the influencers. They're being taken are the influencers, the people on TikTok, the people on Instagram that are posting about Cuba. And so I don't know, man. I'm just doing the best that I can with what I have. And
yeah. Well, I appreciate even what you're saying, because I think a lot of the time the podcast conversations lean to like the dangers of social media, and they are real, and the addiction stuff, and we should put away our phones. But what we're talking about here is strategic advocacy, using our freedom of speech to talk about things that actually matter, and choosing to just not say, I'm overwhelmed by all of it, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to do nothing.
Get off of social media. Like, why are you on social media that long? Like social media is not, if it should never amplify your voice to where your voice is all that matters. If you are a believer, your social media should when people encounter your social media, they should see Jesus in some way or form. So get off of social media. If you're sitting there for 15 hours watching TikTok, then you have a problem. Like, then it is a real issue. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm 40 years old.
TikTok too is like, hey, you've been here too long. Maybe it's time to take a break.
Yeah, man. I'm 40 years old though. Social media has a different take for me. You know, I'm from the MySpace generation where I was doing HTML. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to spend my time loving the people that are in my circle. Yeah. And, you know, having moments that nobody sees. I take pictures and people are like, oh, you're going to put that on social media? I'm like, no, it's for me. That's for me.
Yes,
that's for me to have.
That's it. Yeah, I just posted today for the first time in a couple months on social. I just thought, I haven't posted in a while. I probably should. But there's so many photos I don't need to post. I want the memory, but I don't need to share the memory. So kind of because we're going down this line, there's a topic that you talked about on Andy Andrew her podcast / TV thing that kind of intrigued me, because I mean, maybe in some way it resonates with my own story about being mid-30s. I don't have any kids, but just general, I would love for you to talk about, you know, like the stuff in life that doesn't go how you thought, and how you pray into those things, how you wrestle with God for things, or how you accept what God has given you in life, even if it wasn't what you planned. Because whatever the topic may be, whether it's you want to have kids, or you want to be married, or you want more money, or you want your physical health to be better, I don't know, whatever it is, we all have those things. So I'd love for again, just like some insight from you into what you've gone through in your journey that's helped you know God and know his purposes in your life, even when it didn't look like what you thought it would look like. Like on a personal level, it's Joanna, single, childless, 36 today. Yeah. And it's not how I thought life would go, but it doesn't mean my life isn't good, you know? And so there's, you know, and so in just what you were sharing a little bit in what you were sharing with you know, Andy on her podcast, you were talking about more about your own journey of not having kids. But I want to I don't need you to sit there too long, because not everyone's going to resonate with that. It's more like the principle of that to none of us, so many of us, life didn't go how we thought. So let's jump in there.
I think the real question's about legacy. I have this book I'm currently writing. My hope is to release it next year. It's all about being fruitful. Called Fruitful, Motherhood and Lack thereof. Now, I got the revelation of fruitfulness from my battle with infertility. Or I don't like to call it a battle, because I wasn't really in a fist fight with it. But, you know, walking through infertility gave me the revelation of fruitfulness. And it made me realize that I'm still a tree and I'm still bearing fruit, even though it wasn't the fruit that I thought it was. And I think a lot of times life throws us curveballs. And you're like, I don't even like plums, Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, I was looking to be an orange tree. And and I think that you just got to be able to look at the fruit of your life and be content in the fruit of your life. And for me, I learned to be content in the fruit of my life through infertility. And I think that life is going to be hard. I said this earlier. I said life is hard, but so is the cross. And I always go back to the Cuba thing for me, because I think of what my grandparents sacrificed so that I could be born into freedom. They didn't sacrifice their life so that I would have an easy life. They sacrificed so that I could have a free life. And freedom doesn't necessarily mean easy. And I think Jesus did that for us. He gave us this freedom so that we could walk out in freedom to love people. But life doesn't always look like how we think it does. And I think that when you understand it through that filter, you don't get mad when you can't have kids, or you don't get mad because you got married late, or you don't get married, or whatever it is that people are walking through. You didn't get the job you wanted. I can't tell you how many jobs I did not get that I wanted, and 5 months down the road, I thanked God for that, me not getting that job.
Right.
100%.
Or I mean, in the kid thing, it's seeing what you've been able to do in ministry and fruitfulness and like building into so many people as disciples, or if it's singleness, or if it's financial. I mean, there's so many things that we pray for that God doesn't give us, and it's for good reason. But the thing that we're asking for isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No.
But sometimes it's not the right thing for us.
Yeah. I think it's the difference between a good thing and a God thing. And it's not like God doesn't want you to have good things. He just wants you to have God things. And and for me, I mean, I would not have been able to walk away from a 20-year career with peace, knowing I don't have to work for the next year and a half if I don't want to, if I had kids. You know what I'm saying? So I'm living a very dope life right now, traveling the United States and doing all these things. And God, I got a cool job, dude. I got a smoking hot husband. I'm living my best life. Like, I'm like Mexico, and, you know, friggin' I'm going to spend 3 weeks in Montana, like just literally doing the coolest things. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if all those things I would have hoped for in my 20s if I would have got. And so, like, you're hoping and praying for things right now. I promise you in 20 years, in 10 years, you're going to look down the line and go, thank God that you held back that door and that there was another door, because the doors that God opens are so much better than the doors you try to open for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and there are people, though, of course, like some church, they've got the bad theology maybe around like what it means to like pray, or health and wealth, gospel, prosperity. You're going to get all this good stuff, and it doesn't happen for a lot of people. They get disillusioned. You know, what would you say if there's someone listening who's like that? You know, they're in that place. They're feeling like God has let them down.
I sat on my couch a couple months ago, not a couple months, it had to be about a year ago, and I was facing something I had never faced before. And I remember sitting on my couch I got saved when I was 5 years old. I was baptized when I was 8. I rededicated my life, really started living for Jesus when I was 17. I'm 40. And I sat on my couch and said, Jesus, I don't even know if I believe in you anymore. And I think that it's okay to wrestle with God. I think it's okay to have real hard conversations. I've said some pretty bad words to Jesus, and he still loves me. And I think that God's big enough for our questions, but we got to be ready for the answers, kind of like Job, you know? And one thing that I do in moments where I feel the most detached from him, and I don't know what the frick he's saying, and I don't know what the heck to do, I go back to the word and the things that I know to be true. And I read Psalms 23 over my life over and over and over again, because in Psalms 23, it talks about all the things he does, and all I have to do is rest. And so if I can just find rest, and rest to me is not the lack of busyness. Rest is being in the presence of God. If I can just be in the presence of God, I'll find like he's never going to short me. So I speak the facts. Lord, you are for me. God, you said you never leave me nor forsake me. God, you said that I'm not alone. I literally speak the word of God over myself, whether I feel it or not. And, peace is not a feeling. It's the person of Jesus Christ. And I will myself to that. And I did that sitting on my couch a year and a half ago. God, I don't believe in you right now, but I do know that you love me and you're with me. And I'll work through this. And I did. And, I'm here on the other side walking some pretty amazing things out, with God. And so if you're in that and you feel that way, don't trust your feelings. Trust God. Feelings can't be trusted. I have an entire podcast on that,
Tell us more about your podcast. I mean, you're in a new season of life. So is that a conflict? I don't know if that's an issue. Like
no, not at all.
The content you're creating is not a conflict with your new job.
No.
Why do you do the podcast? I mean, I sometimes just tell the story of the conversations I was having with all these brilliant people like you behind the scenes. I wanted more people to hear what we were talking about. And so that's one of the main reasons I started this podcast now many years ago. Season 7 now is what you're part of. So we've been doing this a while, but why are you podcasting? Like, you wrote a book. Like, you're spending. This is like extra time on top of your work. So why are you doing this? What do you hope it's accomplishing for people?
I couldn't be the only woman or creative or emotional person out there that somebody said you're too emotional. I just couldn't be the only one. And I was sick and tired of feeling bad because God had given me emotions. God, our emotions are a gift. They're indicator lights to what God is doing and how we should be perceiving things. Now, I just think that people don't know how to steward their feelings. And so that was my motivation. Like, Jesus was the most overwhelmed ever in the Garden of Gethsemane, yet he still stood up, kissed the guy that betrayed him, and went and did what he needed to do. And I wanted to be that. That's like the dream of my life, is to still be overwhelmed, but still do what I need to do. And that's why I started it. Like, I just talk about feelings, and feelings aren't bad. Right now I'm in season 7.
I cry in corners. You're talking about crying in a corner.
Jesus cried in a corner. There's nothing wrong with having feelings. The problem is when you don't have feelings and you don't talk about your feelings and you let people talk down at you because of your feelings. No, I mean, there's a way to steward them and steward them well. And that's what I've been talking about for 7 seasons. So I'm just going to keep doing it till I have nothing else to say.
Yeah. What are you excited about? Maybe one of the last questions here as we wrap up. What are you excited about when you think about media, content creation? A lot of people listening are, they're Christian people. They may or may not actually work in church themselves, but I just talked to the guy who's leading Alpha, like the evangelism film series, but he's doing that with the youth series. So Dan Blythe, he was creative lead at Hillsong London.
Yeah, I know who he is.
Yeah, and he was talking about all this stuff with like animation and what they're curious about for next gen content creation with animation. I mean, so it's a big, broad question. What's some stuff you're excited about creatively, stuff you think other people should pay attention to? Are you buying that iPhone 13? I don't know, just like let's talk creative. You got that? Okay, good.
Yeah. I think there are some real pioneers out there right now. My friends at Tulsa, Victory Tulsa, JD out there, he's like, there are some for real pioneers in the media field right now. That guy, like, they're doing movies and Broadway styled shows. And I think there's a lot of churches out there that are really putting the world to shame on creativity. I think that they haven't really made it out yet. But you've got people like, JD and stuff like that. John Daughtry is his name. And you guys, if you're not following Victory Tulsa, it's sad because they're killing it. But I'm
not. I got to go check it out now.
You need to. They're incredible. They just
don't want to be sad.
No, man, they did Pilgrim's Progress, but they changed it and they made it like for this generation. And I've just never seen anybody do anything like that. And I also spent the last year doing documentaries. And so I think that believing filmmakers are really going to start coming out of the woodwork. I've seen it. I've been in it. Streaming services that aren't weird are coming out of the woodwork. And I was thankful to be a part of one for the last year. And I think that for me, we have some things in the work for us, some shows that we're writing that we're going to produce ourselves. I mean, I produced 15 shows in 8 months over the last year and a half. And so I'm going to keep doing that and keep writing. And I have a book coming out that I'm really excited about. So for me, it's like, the world is shifting. The creatives, I feel like God has broken us off from the church world and is deploying us into the world. And it's not to bring the church culture into the world, but to bring Jesus into the world. And there's a real big difference. Shoreline Church does it really beautifully in Destin. They go into bars and they have church on the water and they do things like I've never seen. I mean, they built their church literally in a club. And I think there's a lot of churches out there that have been doing it great for a really long time. And they're not mega churches. Some of them are, but some of them aren't. And I believe that God's hand is on I went to Rome and I saw all this creativity in all these churches. And I believe that God's going to ignite creativity back into the church, but not necessarily in the church, but in outside the four walls of the church.
The people of the church. Yeah.
People, the big C, the actual people.
Yeah, I love that. Cha-dee, if people want to find you, I mean, you've just thrown some churches out, so they're maybe going to want to go check those out. But if they want to find you, they want to not miss this book when it comes out. Where do you want to send people?
You can go to icryingcorners.com. My other books are there. My podcast is there. You can follow me on the Instagram, chariorozco.com. I respond to all my DMs on Instagram. That's pretty much where I live. And if I'm on a social network. And, but yeah, icryingcorners.com. I'm in the middle of season 7. We've got episodes 4 and 5 coming out in the next couple of weeks. I'm excited to see what God's going to do. And, but yeah. Also, happy birthday, by the way.
Yeah, it's my birthday as we record this. Birthday. Thanks so much. I wanted to talk to you because one of the things I like about you is I just know I can throw something at you and you're going to give a thoughtful, wise answer shooting out of your mouth. And I don't mean that because it's because you have a history of working it out. So when I'm asking you a question fresh, you're not just making it up for the first time. You've actually wrestled through a lot of this stuff, and it shows in your life. It shows in how you speak, shows in the kind of stuff that's happening in your, even just creatively, what you're able to produce. You're an inspiring person. And so people, especially for women listening, I think a lot of the creative leads that we follow are guys, which is great. But there's some women like you killing it out there, and people need to know. So thank you so much, just for spending a bit of time and inspiring people today and being real with us about all that.
Oh man, I'm honored to be here. I look at you and I look at all the things that you're doing and what you're putting your hand to. And I believe that it's just the next wave of women, of God lifting people up and doing stuff. And I'm just excited to be locked arms with you in this next season, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks.
Of course.